Well, hello and welcome to the show, Chris. It's such a pleasure to have you on Unabashed You. Thanks for saying yes.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it and looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, me too. Me too, for sure. Is there anything you want listeners to know about you before we get started here?
Well, I guess I'll point out that I'm from Scotland in case that people are often trying to figure out where the accent's from, because I hadn't lived in Scotland for 6 or so years, and so the accent has kind of become a little like I was living in Australia for a bit, and I'm living in Canada, and it's just kind of a bit all over the place. But yeah, I'm from Scotland, and hope to reclaim the accent a bit at some point. But yeah, I guess there's that, and then the fact that I guess we've been connected by a sort of mutual acquaintance, because somebody read my book, and then she'd been a guest on your podcast, and then connected us up. So I guess that's worth just setting the scene of the context here.
Right, right. And as we were talking about right before we get on, I love that that's kind of how we can meet people is through other people and say, oh my gosh, this guy's doing this great thing. You should talk to him. Or she says the same, this
Yeah.
gal's got a podcast. You should, talk to her. I love it. I just think that is part of the richness of life. And I appreciate that so much when people want to share. What three words would you use to describe yourself, Chris?
Well, it's funny because for the last couple of years, I've been interviewing my family and friends about their life. And part of what we do is we swap three words we use to describe one another. So I've actually had 75 of my family and friends provide three words. And so, I have multiple answers for this, but the three top ones that come up that
No.
I guess are based.
Well, and I want to say what you think of yourself, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Well, I guess I mean, the main themes that come up really do reflect on how I see myself, which is perfect, right? Like, it's great. So for me, the first one is fun, or funny would be another one potentially. But that's one of I love laughing and I love making people laugh. Um, Driven would be another one. So I'm very much like I want to be practical and get on with things and try out things and see how they go. I'm very organized would be the third one. So those two kind of come hand in hand to some extent, but I guess I used to be a real planner for the sake of planning almost, but I guess in the last maybe 10 years I've become that. No, let's just crack on with it and see how things work out. So yeah, I'll go with fun, driven, and organized.
And as a fellow organizer, I always appreciate meeting another fellow
Totally.
organizer. And the fun part, yes, yes, yeah. I hope you can tell by the questions I'm asking you that it's not just where were you born, how many brothers and sisters do you have,
Totally.
that sort of thing. It's like let's get to know you in this very kind of fun, different way.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, have you played Two Truths and a Lie before? Do you know how this goes?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then
Um,
hit me with three things that I'll see if I can tell. I haven't been doing very well lately, just to let you know.
okay. I've lived in Malta. I can drive, I guess you call it stick or manual.
Right.
Um, and I very recently shaved my hair.
Okay. Ooh. Shaved your hair as in you're presenting with a bald head and
Hmm.
and a beard, which is very, very nice looking, might I say. I just can throw
Thank
that
you.
out there. Throw that out there. Okay, you've lived in Malta, you can drive stick, and you shaved your hair very recently. Okay. Okay. I hope you can drive stick because it's a lost art and it is a lot of fun. I don't think people that don't know how to do it realize that it can be a really fun venture. However, it also gets kind of tedious if you're kind of sick of it or you have a lot of hills that you have to get up. Okay, so I'm going to say, I think you shaved your head, you could drive stick. Oh gosh, you might say you can't drive stick. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, I'm going to go with I lived in Malta as the lie.
Nope. I can't drive stick. I actually just can't drive full stop so far. I have not taken requisite lessons yet, but it's something that's definitely on the agenda soon. But um, yeah, it's not happened for me yet. I've kind of had a bit of money to learn to drive and instead used that to go and live abroad. And one of the places that I did live was I studied abroad in Malta for 5 months.
Oh
So,
my gosh. How did you like that?
I mean, it genuinely was the best thing I've ever done and was the best 5 months of my life, and nothing will ever top that, which is both fantastic and kind of sad at the same time to know that life has peaked, but it's such a high peak that I'm absolutely content with that. But yeah, I went there for 5 months and lived in a residence with 100 international students, and we had a pool and a bar. So our lives were just a holiday for 5 months, basically. So it was just, yeah, the most incredible time.
Wow, that sounds like a wonderful experience. It really does. How great that you had that opportunity and that it is going to be a high point of your life. Okay, and when was kind of talking about driving stick, eh, I kind of picked up a little something. So I should have gone with that gut feeling of the little thing.
You're going with the gut. Yeah,
Yeah,
should have gone with your
because
gut.
it is fun. It is very hard to learn at first for a lot of people. It is a lot of fun. And like I say, hills, like if there's a light, a stoplight on a hill, you're like, oh no, because you'll see when you get there, when you find it.
Well, I guess, yeah. Well, I guess the thing is that being from the UK, like we don't even call it stick or manual. That's just driving. Like that's your default. So like we kind of we say automatic, but we don't, that's the kind of outlier almost. So for me now, I've been lived in a few different spots and seen that people can just learn automatic and you can get by with that. And obviously electric cars coming into play now, etc. I'm very much of the mindset of like, well, I'll probably just end up learning automatic, which, you know, isn't isn't common at all back home.
Okay, is it called okay, shifting or stick? What's that called back home?
That's just driving. Like that's just, I guess manual is the term.
Okay,
Like,
do
but
most cars come manual?
yeah,
Oh, they do back there. Okay. Oh, because that's such a difference. I mean, in my lifetime, and I'm older than you, obviously. In the beginning, automatic was rare. Everybody you had, the shifting, this the stick, but
yeah.
now it's really just the opposite. It's very hard to find a car here where you're shifting,
Mm,
unless it's a sports car. That's a
right. Yeah, yeah.
well, I kind of like that it's on your list, as in you're like, I do want to know how to do this, even though
Yeah.
I really don't have to. I want to.
No, I think I will. Even if it's a case of just being able to rent a car for the weekend and get out of the city type that type of thing, like that'll be really useful. But yeah, I do want to learn at some point.
Okay, I admire that about you. Okay, and you shaved, so the shaving of your head, that's true.
Mm.
So is that something? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that happened a week ago. So when I say recent, like yeah,
It's recent. That really is recent.
yeah. Look, it's something that I've been considering for a while. In terms of it's basically born out of an insecurity position and just feel it like quite a receding hairline and then it kind of balding at the back and just some days I just catch myself in the mirror and be like, wow, that's really and I messaged a couple of mates who have done it and they both kind of said the same thing. They were both like, look, if you're thinking about doing it, just do it, and the worst case is you just let it grow back. Like it's not and so yeah, I did it, and yeah, as I say, it's been a week and it feels very liberating. It's still odd, like when I catch myself, even just like looking on the screen right now. But I've had nothing but compliments really, which has been really nice. But it just feels quite liberating, and I don't dislike it at all. So on myself, which is probably the main thing. So yeah,
Right. And I would throw my hat in the ring of saying, I mean, I didn't get to meet you before, but I would
Mm,
say it looks very, very good on you.
thank you.
Yeah, you'll probably keep it up and you'll probably be very pleased that you did. Because at
Yeah,
some point, it's like, you just like, yeah, like your friend said, go for it. Just go for it. And thankfully, I think right now, culturally, it's not only acceptable, it's considered handsome, where there was a
yeah.
time when it was not. And
Mm,
lots of people did lots of things to make sure they didn't present as somebody balding. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you're at a good time frame, and it looks good on you.
Thanks.
All the signs point to yes. So tell me a person. Oh, no, no, let's go to a movie next. If we're movie people at all, we typically have quite a few favorite movies. But tell me about one of your favorite movies today.
Yeah, so my typical answer to this, I kind of caveat with it's definitely my favorite movie in terms of a movie of like the first time I've watched it. It's probably not because it has a twist ending, it's not then as good the second time or second or third time, but it's Ocean's 11. I absolutely love that movie. And to be fair, I do rewatch it and still really enjoy it. I just think it's so slick and cool and big into sort of heist movies and used to read a lot of like espionage thrillers and things. So it just kind of ties into all of that. And I mean, the cast is speaks for itself, but yeah, great movie.
Okay, I think you're somebody else mentioned Ocean's 11 as their favorite
Okay.
movie. So it's fun. You're in good company, and yeah, it certainly was a really great movie. I remember how much I liked it when I saw it. A person that inspires you. Where are you finding?
Yeah, so like I have to say my late granddad Jake, just in terms of how he was as a person, but also him and my grandma retired. Well, they worked like from when they were like 14 or whatever, and then retired sort of early-ish and just went traveling and traveled the world. And that's definitely where I got my inspiration to want to do travel and live abroad. So yeah, I'd say my granddad.
Okay, so because of how they lived their lives, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, in terms of him as a person, like I love the way that he could like quietly command a room, and he wouldn't really say much, but when he did say something, it was always quite funny, and I really admired that. But and he was very much a family man. Like his favorite time was having everybody, all the family around. But yeah, I think I like so they, as I say, they used to travel a lot, and they had a pinboard map of the world. And I remember being a kid and like looking at that and seeing all these pins and they'd come back from their holidays and they'd have that you'd wait a month or two and then they'd get the photos printed and then you'd kind of see all the photos and I, like that was my sort of exposure to the world, I guess, in some ways. And it just inspired me to. I mean, I saw the opportunity when I went to uni, as I've mentioned, to study abroad. Like, that wasn't afforded to people like way back when, but for me, it was super easy to do that, right? So, that was the real inspiration for that, and yeah, just the love of I guess not just seeing the world though. It's like it's actually going and living in different spots and kind of absorbing the culture. That's where I've kind of taken it, but the original inspiration was him and my grandma, like yeah, traveling the world, and yeah, I've now got a pinboard map of my own with pins, and it's very much inspired off of theirs. So
And the fact that you have lived in Malta, you've lived in Australia, you're living in Canada, and you're a young man. So I mean, it's incredible you've already had and made the opportunities to live in those places.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess it's a lot easier these days to do it. But yeah, as I say, the inspiration came from him.
Oh, I love that legacy, generations having an impact on the ones behind them. That's beautiful. What wisdom do you keep handy, Chris? Something that you go back to.
Yeah, I think the piece of wisdom is that connection with people is fundamentally all that matters. I kind of took that from Tuesdays with Maury. Um, Beautiful little book, and I read that in lockdown in a time of feeling quite disconnected, and yeah, it just stuck out to me. I'm quite like a logical person, so to me it was just so logical. Like you can have all the prestige or the money or the whatever, but ultimately like you don't have people around you to enjoy that with or have memories with or be able to celebrate each other's wins and stuff. Then like what's the point? And so that's kind of my like one of my founding kind of principles or mantras, whatever you want to call it. But that's the piece of wisdom I go back to is that yeah, connection with the people in your life is fundamentally what it's all about.
Right. And I just have an inkling that this is going to dovetail nicely with the deep dive, which is we're talking about kind of our classic Unabashed You episode is around passion and purpose. Do you think how do you see passion and purpose?
Yeah. I think passion can be um you can have passion for a hobby, for kind of entertainment reasons, for kind of miscellaneous reasons, and but then you can also have passion for something that seems greater than yourself, which is, I guess, where the purpose comes in. Um, Mine is definitely that I am incredibly passionate about and have kind of found my purpose in deepening my relationships and encouraging others to deepen their connections as well. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Okay, so deepening connection. That's really great. And I think you're doing that through conversation. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so it started as a personal project that came off the back of reading Tuesdays with Maury, as I've mentioned. I just felt really impacted by that book. And so I decided to start a personal project where for the first year, I was doing a call a week to catch up with someone that I hadn't spoken to in a while. So I did that for a year, did these sort of 50 calls, and then decided, like, actually, I want to do something a bit deeper, maybe more meaningful. And so for the last couple of years, I've been interviewing my family and friends about their lives and about our relationship as well. So I've been recording these conversations, which, are like podcasts, but the key difference is that they're not public. So they're just private conversations. So I sort of send the audio file to the person I chat to and they can listen back if they want. Um, but I've been doing that for the past couple of years. And the way it works is there's three parts of the conversation. So part one, I ask them questions about their life. Part two, we swap three words we use to describe one another. So what I talked about earlier, swap affirmations. And then part three, we go down memory lane and reflect on our shared experiences. So I've recorded 75 of these so far and decided to write about it because I've had so many benefits in my life and to my relationships that I want other people to experience those benefits. And so I wrote the book to encourage others to do something similar. Now, that came out towards the end of 2023. And as we're recording, it's sort of early 2024. And what I'm doing now is taking the book and turning it into a movement. So I'm starting a movement to encourage conversations that deepen connection. And what that looks like is sort of three things. The first is a podcast of my own where people can get a bit of an insight into the chats that I've been having. I'll be hosting an episode with a friend and there'll be a theme and a question of the episode. So, the theme might be live music and the question might be, tell me about a memorable gig you've been to. And the first part of the episode is just me and my friend going back and forth talking about that. And then the idea is to pose that question to the listener to go and ask someone in their life that question. And then what I want to get to is that listeners then get in touch and tell me that they've had one of these conversations or that they've done one of the other activities, which is like, swapping the three words or doing the memories thing, one of those activities. And I want people to get in touch with me and tell me that they've done that. So then the second part of the podcast is me reading out messages from listeners who have gone and had those conversations themselves so that other people listening can go, oh, that sounds great. That I could do that. That's really like easy, and it kind of has that ripple effect of action breeds more action. So that's the podcast. I also want to run events where people can come along with someone that they know and engage in one of these activities in a pub or a cafe, sort of informal setting, and maybe learn something about, how to have these deep and meaningful conversations. And then I also want to create kind of, at the minute, I've created a downloadable PDF with like the script of how I do the conversations that I do. But I want to break that up into more like actionable little guides that people can take away and little questions people can have. So yeah, it's kind of a podcast, events, and sort of resources, and that makes up this idea of that conversations movement, which yeah, is very much just kind of in the background, getting all the branding stuff and the website and all of that ready to go at some stage this year. And I just really want to encourage others to, yeah, have more deep, meaningful chats and deepen their connections. And yeah, from that, I think there's loads of links into mental health and having conversations around that. But yeah, that's kind of where my passion and purpose is sort of leading me at this point.
Right. Okay, so many wonderful things come up for me. First, so the movement going to be the name of the book, and what's the name of the book? I'm trying to keep all this straight.
Okay, so the book is already out. The book is called Conversations Connecting with People in Our Lives. It's available on Amazon as a paperback and an ebook. So that's already out there. And the movement, which is called That Conversations Movement, is essentially just the next. Yeah, that. Yeah,
That. Okay.
yeah. That it's essentially the next step. And the book kind of comes under that, right? It's the sort of origin story, if you like, because it's about my project. But what I see the movement going forward is more like me talking about it rather than people reading about it. Because I think that it'll be easier to get people to take action and actually do something for themselves if I simplify things and actually just talk about it. And people listening in to me having chats with my mates will. That's what I'm hoping. Really, it's also just a fun thing for me to do with friends to have this podcast and to chat to them. So as long as I'm enjoying it, then we'll crack on. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So many wonderful moving parts, and each step of the way, it's about connection through conversation, and then also kind of modeling in a way what other people could do too, and giving them the resources to be able to do that very thing. Wonderful.
Yeah.
When is your podcast slated to kind of come out? Or is that
Yeah.
you're
So
still working on it?
yeah, so I've now recorded a couple of pilots, and I've got one more to record. But I'm hoping I'm sort of waiting on the branding stuff to come through, and once that comes through, then I'm looking at sort of sometime in March. So let's say a month from now to just launch it all.
Just around the corner.
Yeah.
Just around the corner. Now, do you have a website where people can find some of this?
Yeah. So that's still a little bit of a work in progress, but it's conversationsmovement.com.
Okay. Okay. And I know, totally understand that under construction or trying to, you're working on it, you're doing all the things. I am, I don't know if mystified is the right word. I am, um, gosh, I don't even know what the right word for it be. It's kind of an awe moment, and that is the good that came out of the pandemic. I mean, yes, it was an absolutely horrific, scary, global
Mm.
thing that we all went through together, and we spent so much time in our homes or wherever we were living and doing all kinds of things and being fearful. You were there was fear there for sure, and maybe you knew people that had it. I mean, the whole thing we went through it together. I am in awe of all of the good that came from it. Like
Mm.
this, you read that book during the pandemic. That book moved you to want to do some parallel kind of a thing, and look at how it has just like blossomed into this. I mean, you've got, this branch with this fruit going out here, and this branch with this fruit is going out here, and you've got resources and PDF. So it's not something that you want to do for you, although I'm sure that it is completely joyous and fulfilling. You're also wanting to share, kind of like what we were talking about before, doing the thing. Your purpose impacts other people. That's the whole point of it, right? You can have
Totally.
passion. If you make it a purpose, then other people get to benefit from that.
Yeah. And I guess, I've already like the the motivation for this from the outset was that I just wanted to know my family and friends better, right? So the book was never on the horizon. This whole movement thing, those have come about after the fact. So it's meant that, it's all been incredibly intrinsically motivated because the whole purpose was for me to get to know my family and friends better. And now it's at a point where, I mean, I'm still having these kind of conversations and calls, but really it's now a point where I just want other people to experience all the amazing benefits that I have through doing this. And I don't think I think it's something that, might seem quite daunting to people to get started with and to have even one of these conversations. Which is why, like, with the movement moving forward, I'm kind of breaking up what I've done into, like, separate activities. So, like, you could just have a call with someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Like, and that's participating in the movement. You could just ask someone questions about their life story. You could just swap the three words to describe one another. You could just do the memories activity where you go back and forth and swap and kind of reminisce and in your shared stories. And you could just take the question from a podcast episode and ask one of your family and friend one of your family members or friends that it is participating in this movement. And that so for me, it's like just kind of trying to create this ripple where more people participate, and therefore that encourages other people to go and consider it. Because, maybe it's not for everyone, but I do believe it is for most people to at least have or be on the receiving end. That's one thing I say to people as well, is that if you just flip it and you imagine one of your friends asking you to participate in something like this, like, how, like, lovely would that be? So you can be the one to take the initiative and kind of give that to someone.
Right. Absolutely. And it's striking me that having a conversation, I don't want to say it's more difficult, but we're kind of moving a little bit away from conversation. When I think of how we communicate with people, it's like text. Like,
Yep.
I hate to say I don't actually want to talk to that person. I just want them to get this little piece of information. But, it's to the point now where that is a lot of the times you're conveying information. And then when you call someone now, you're not even necessarily leaving a message. You're like, they're not there. I'll just text them the info I want them to have. So I love the idea of like bringing back and giving in a place of, it's almost like sacred, being able to connect with one other person and have a conversation that could be light and funny, like you say, about, a concert, a musical event, or I'm sure there's some other deep, wonderful questions there as well. So the fun, which is your first word, and then also deeper. And sometimes I find when I'm talking to someone, maybe I don't know them, maybe they're in my life and I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of running out of things to come up with. And I like the idea of having a resource and also making it really intentional, saying, hey, I have this thing, or I've got, how did you come up with your questions?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for everybody, I probably have asked the same, let's say 7 or 8 questions that are kind of obvious because they're just following someone's kind of timeline. So, literally starting with what were you like as a kid and where did you grow up, through to what was primary school like, what was high school like, what did you do after like straight after high school, and why, what's the career been like, and then kind of where are you at now and what's coming up. So, that's the basic timeline, I guess, that I ask everybody. But within that, I mean, because these are people that I know things about them already that I know I want to ask them. So if things don't come up, maybe like a particular hobby or like a relationship or something that maybe doesn't naturally come up, I know that I want to ask them about. So I just have 7 or 8, say, bullet points for that are consistent, but then I also have a bunch that are very unique to each individual person, and that's because I know these people, right? And I know their life, and some things come up naturally, but sometimes you have to. Is it okay if I ask you about this, or right? Can I just ask you about this specific thing that I know you've done, or yeah? So I guess I just started with the, like, right, what's the timeline look like, and what are the questions that kind of fit that, and then go from there in terms of more specific things. But really the magic in all of this comes through the follow-up questions, so and keeping them incredibly simple. So what I mean by follow-up questions is asking someone like why, or what did you mean by that, or how did that come about? And you basically base that off of you ask someone about primary school, let's say, and they start telling you this story, and then there's a little there that oh, that's something I want to ask them, but they're still telling the story. But then you wait till they finish, and then you come back to, so you mentioned this, like, so what was the relationship like between you two at that time? Like, or some sort of follow up, or why did you do this? Or, and then you just kind of, there's no end to the kind of rabbit holes that you can go down. And that's like the beauty of it. Right. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree completely. And obviously, you've gotten really good through all of this practice since the pandemic to now. We're talking about 4 years ish. You've gotten really good at listening, and you've gotten really good at knowing kind of where you want to like shoot, offshoots, because you have no idea when you head in, like my conversation with you today. I mean, I knew I had a very basic outline, but within that, now that we're talking, it's like, ooh, I want to know about this. Ooh, I want to know about that. And so that's, like you say, that's some of the magic that comes from it. Um, I yeah, and you've gotten clearly very, very good at it. And I really am really excited by everything that you are putting out there, because I do love the word that you added, movement, conversations, movement, because you see what it could be. And if people um get excited about it too, then it's just going to have this beautiful ripple effect that'll keep going. I mean, I already want to know some of the questions, because I'm thinking, ooh, my mom, ooh, my dad, ooh, because we don't always know what to ask. We don't always know what
Sure.
to ask.
And I think that's a great point. Like, this gives someone a kind of almost like an excuse, like, oh, I've listened to this thing, or I've read this book, and now I've got this thing that I want to do with you. And it's like an activity to do, rather than just like out the blue, like, hey, can I ask you some questions? There's kind of a bit more of a lead in, because you've listened to something or you read something. I think the point you made earlier about we just kind of text each other and that's how we communicate, is so apt as well. Like, I've done a bit of reading into movements and what makes a good movement, and really, it's like you position yourself against something. And for me, it's definitely, social media means we're more connected than ever, and we are in the sense that we can be having this kind of conversation, or that's how this came about, right? But it's also incredibly shallow connections, and just liking someone's Instagram story isn't actually connecting in my book. So, like, I just feel like we need to deepen our connections with the people that we like really, our close circles of people that we really care about. And I think as well, there's so much assumed knowledge. So because we've known people for, even just a few years, there's just so many assumed things that, like, we've maybe heard snippets about, but if we actually were set a quiz on like our friend's life, we wouldn't be able to do very well, I don't think. So it's kind of taking the time to really put together people's sort of jigsaw in your head. I think is another really key point to this, is that there's a lot of assumed knowledge out there, and even like something like swapping the 3 words, there's a lot of assumed kind of appreciation out there, especially for men. Like, I found there to be such a difference between doing this with the men in my life and the women in my life, in terms of that kind of men struggle to, or more struggle to give and receive the 3 words, because we're not really, our way of showing endearment is to kind of like rag on each other, and that's fine too. I'm not saying to completely get rid of that, because I love doing that too, but I think it is nice to sit down with a mate and just be like, hey, like, one of the words I'd use to describe you is loyal, because you're a really loyal friend because of XYZ. So I think that that's something as well, the kind of showing appreciation to one another, that we've kind of, I don't know if we've lost, or we just have never done it, or yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think there needs to be more of that in the world.
I agree. I completely agree with you. And that's probably also why I'm drawn to this format, because it's having conversations with people, and being able to ask questions and get to know you and hear about, what makes you tick, what makes you want to share the gift that you have, back to purpose, passion and purpose, and then who you are. I mean, I've got this nice image now of who you are as a person, how you show up in your life, and how intentional, and then how gracious, absolutely gracious, you are with your time, and turning this into a movement. So, wow, awesome. Good for you.
Thanks.
Is there anything that you didn't get to say? Anything in conclusion?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think one thing is that you already said it, but like I've kind of I wrote my book with two principles in mind. One was simplicity, so less is more. So the book is actually incredibly short, so it's like 90 pages, and that was very deliberate to just. And I've actually had a few friends that maybe don't read that much have got back to me and said that they read it in one go, and it's the first book they've ever read in one sitting. And I'm like, perfect, like that's exactly what I was trying to do. So there, simplicity. The other thing was authenticity. So if it doesn't feel me, don't do it. And then with the movement moving forward, I'm keeping those two principles and then also introducing practicality. So making it really actionable and doable. But then the last one is something that you've mentioned already, which is a complete blend of 50% wholesome, serious vulnerability side of things, and then 50% fun, funny, hilarious stories, silly. And because that's what the project has been to me, right? Yeah, there's been the wholesome moments and the real breakthrough vulnerability, which has been amazing. And, it's helped me in turn to be more vulnerable. But like it would do a disservice to just talk about that when I've also had some of the funniest conversations I've ever had with mates, and heard some stories that absolutely are not for public consumption, and that's incredible as well to have that material on record if I ever need to blackmail any of my friends. But yeah, that the whole point is that it's a blend of the wholesome and the fun.
Oh, and to me, that is perfect. It's perfect. It's a place and a space for both, which, yeah, I concur completely. I really do. Chris, what a pleasure, absolute pleasure this has been. I'm really excited to continue to follow how this is all going for you. And then also, participate in my own way in the conversations
Awesome.
movement. Where do you want people to find you? I mean, do you want them to go to your website or?
Yeah, look, the website, conversationsmovement.com. I'm going to have a form on the website for when people do participate in one of these activities, they can get in touch and sort of fill out a few questions. And then that's the kind of thing that I'll read out, as a testimonial on the podcast to help others. And then there'll be an Instagram account at Conversations Movement as well. And it'll be on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you. What a pleasure it's been today, Chris. I really enjoyed meeting you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.